Hello again, well, the long-awaited 1.1.08 chunker of a patch for Diablo 4 is finally here, and it is a massive one as the developers have promised. There's a lot of nerfs, a lot of buffs to various things, and some unique new items, 6 unique items, 7 new legendary aspects, and a bunch of other changes. With a few words, pretty much all the damage reductions are getting nerfs. The Holy Trinity, core skill damage, crit strike damage, vulnerable damage, massive nerfs there. And just so that the other affixes that weren't as used as much, such as physical damage, blood skill damage, storm skill damage, earth skill damage, and all of those things that were not those 3 I mentioned, have received buffs. So they're trying to buff the things that weren't used, weren't working as well, weren't as useful and worth picking up, and this is good. But they're also nerfing everything that already worked. I do agree that vulnerable damage was and still is something that needs to be removed and completely reworked, but I don't see why they nerfed the crit damage and the core skill damage that much, rather than just buffing the other stuff. But we'll see how it goes in the long run. Hopefully, maybe not for season 1, because for what I'm seeing here is completely disappointing, but hopefully for season 2 or 3 at least we would see the game in a better shape, in a more reasonable shape. Regardless of that, the patch is big. I'll be reading almost all the useful stuff, because there will be a lot of stuff I won't read, because otherwise I will need 2 or 3 videos. I'll try to read the highlights of each category and only the categories that I think people really care about. But there will be text on screen for the stuff that that might be not as useful and as necessary for people to know about. So buckle up, it's a long video, and let's go. The developers have started the patch notes with something about the so-called unique and legendary aspect additions. 6 unique items, and let's go through those one by one. First of all, we have a general one that is for every class, and it's a uber unique, meaning it only drops from level 85 or higher monsters, and it has an extremely low chance of dropping. If a regular unique item has 400,000 or 600,000 weight, uber uniques have 1. So 400,000 or 600,000 less than a regular unique. So what does it do and what is it called? Ahavarian Spear of Lycander. Uber unique stuff, world tier 4 item, gain a random shrine effect for 10 to 20 seconds after killing an elite enemy. Can only occur once every 30 seconds. Pretty much for elite hopping builds, like the Headhunter belt in PoE, and there's other games that have similar items. For Barbarian, we also have a unique one-handed sword, Azure Rat. Lucky hit, your core skills have up to 20% chance to freeze enemies for 3 seconds and deal 0.75 to 1.75 cold damage to them. Next, we have a unique one-handed mace for the Druid called Flash Render, which debilitating roar and bloodhound deal 0.5 to 1.0 damage, again that's scaling, to nearby poisoned enemies. Then for the Necromancer, we have a unique shield, Lidless Woe. Very, I think that name, I think that's a returning name. It's different than what normally the Lidless Woe does, but it is another Easter egg item. Lucky hit, while you have an active Bone Storm, hitting an enemy outside of a Bone Storm has up to a 5 to 25% chance to spawn an additional Bone Storm at their location. Each of your active sacrifice bonuses increases the chance by 25%. By this I mean 25% of the 5 to 25. So if you have 25, then there's additional 25% of that 25, and the total number of additional Bone Storms you can have by +1. So 2 sacrifice bonuses plus 1 Bone Storms, 3 plus 3 Bone Storms, and up to 75% extra of that 25% chance with 3 sacrifices. For Rogue, we have a unique bow, Eagle Horn. Penetrating shot has a 30 to 80% chance to fire an arrow that bounces off walls and scenery. Very fun item. Hitting enemies from behind with penetrating shot will make them vulnerable for 3 seconds. Next, we have the Sorcerer, the Oculus unique wand. Gain the effects of the teleport enhancement for free. When you evade your teleport enhancement, when you invade using the teleport enhancement, you are taken to a random, stressing here, random location. And there is a developer note about the Azure Rat and Flash Render, as I said. They have flat damage effects which scale with power, item power. For example, an 820 item power item, Azure Rat deals 3,359 to 6,718 damage. So after the uniques, it's time for the 7 new legendary aspects. There are 2 general aspects. First, we have Audacity, which is a utility aspect. When there are at least 5 close enemies, stun them for 2 to 4 seconds. This can only occur once every 20 seconds. And they're not saying which one is the scalable, but I think it's the seconds that are the scalable, not the seconds. That, for example, if you have a 2-handed weapon, the 2 to 4 would become 4 to 8, but the 20 seconds would still remain, and the 5 enemies. Craven is a mobility aspect. You gain 20 to 40% increased movement speed when moving away from slow to chilled enemies. This will be very good for those types of mages using the Essus boots. That would be pretty great buff for them. Next up, we have for the Barbarian Ancestral Charge. Something that was showcased in the streams already, and we already knew about it. An offensive aspect for the Barb. Charge calls forth 4 Ancients who also charge, dealing between 50 and 100% of normal damage. For the Druid, we have an offensive aspect called Subterranean, which does Poison Creepers active also casts Landslide in a circle around you. Earth skills deal 10 to 20% increased damage to poisoned enemies. This one also has been already known about. Necromancer. Gore Quills is an offensive aspect. Bloodlands will consume blood orbs to also consume conjure lances from them. Each additional Bloodlance deals 20 to 50% of normal damage and prioritizes targeting unlanced enemies, which again, definitely a nice buff and a boost to the Bloodlance build. Rogue, Pestilent Points, offensive aspect. Every third cast of Puncture is poison imbued with 100 to 150 of normal potency. And then for the Sword, we have Searing Words, offensive aspect. After spending 200 to 100 mana, your next firewall is free to cast and will destroy incoming small missiles. Next up, there are a lot of bug fixes. I won't read all of them on the screen, just something that catches my eye here and there. But there's accessibility bug fixes, a bunch of them. There's a lot of fixes to various different types of challenges. So if you had issues with certain type of challenges, chances are this issue has most likely been resolved. For example, the Feat of Strength Final Slayer of the First Mother now requires you to slay the level 100 Pinnacle boss solo. The Silence is Hellish challenge remains unchanged. There's a bunch of other issues with the Feats of Strength. One of the first and earliest experiences did not display all the titles rewarded and so on. There's a bunch of that, but I'm not gonna read all of those. You can just see the text on screen posts and so on. Moving on, we have cooperative play. A bunch of bug fixes for co-op, such as, for example, NPC conversation boxes would overlap if multiple local co-op players talk to the same NPC at the same time. An issue where the camera wasn't functioning properly when players were far apart in local co-op. Issue where the dark potential challenge would be granted to both players when either player completed it, regardless of the other player's progress. And a few more. Again, I'm not gonna read all of them. If you need to pause, read it on the screen. There's also a bunch of bug fixes for dungeons, a lot of them, a ton of them, for a ton of different dungeons. I'm just gonna read the names of the dungeons, and again, you could pause and read the specific one you care about. So, Chaos Ossuary, Fallen Temple, in general for Nightmare Dungeons and the Monster Again affix, issues with the Goldman and Shambling Corpse enemies in the Forsaken Quarry, Sentinel enemies in the Bastion of Fate dungeon, again more for Bastion of Fate dungeon, another fix, and then fixes for the Fallen Temple Capstone dungeon, for the Crusaders Cathedral dungeon, for the Curse of the Weak and Curse of Indolence in the Fallen Temple Capstone dungeon. Then the fog doors in a few dungeons could not be progressed to another fix. And then issues where the Monster Thorn affix in Nightmare Dungeons was reflecting physical damage and it will now properly reflect non-physical damage. This one I read fully because I think it's important to know about. Also, the bug I've been encountering here and there in Core Dragon with the Blood Balls not properly spawning. Thankfully that's fixed. Issues where traps would do more damage than intended, and where the level scaling in the level 100 Pinnacle dungeon was inconsistent. As well as an issue where the Awakened Glyphstone wouldn't spawn if the party leader left the dungeon before the dungeon was completed. Next up, we have gameplay fixes, and I'll read those by class, starting with the Barb. Fixed an issue where the number of enemies to defeat for the Barbarian class quest Masters of Battle was not displayed. Fixed an issue where Iron Maelstrom could be cast more than 3 times rapidly, casting War Cry. Fixed an issue where stacking the Berserk Reaping, Skullbreaker and Anemia aspects would allow the player to deal extreme amounts of damage, to stunt, bleeding, etc. while berserking enemies. Fixed an issue where the outer edge of the quakes granted to Hammer of the Ancients via the aspect of Ancestral Echoes was dealing far more damage than intended. And this is not the echo itself, but the far outer edges of the echoes were dealing more than the other sides of the echoes instead of dealing the same damage in any part of the echo area. And they're saying that they recognize this is a significant decrease to the Hammer of the Ancients Barbarian build, but they do not want its strength to be reliant on an underlying bug. Well, then buff it by itself, give it a little bit of a buff. So for the Druid, fixed an issue where Earth skills and the Pulverize skill would consume 2 overpower buffs simultaneously. An issue where the bonus effect of the Blood Cow from Night Tower's aspect would apply twice to Wolf Companions, but not at all for Ravens. An issue where Provocation passive stacks wouldn't update properly after adding more points to it. An issue where the automatic transformation from Insatiable Fury would cause the Ursine Strength key passive to not proc consistently. An issue where the Enhanced Pulverize buff would not remove itself while in town. An issue where the Seeking Tornadoes produced by Storm Chase's aspect would not deal damage. As well as where Raven's passive damage did not improve after the skill was upgraded. And where Rabies would deal no damage while standing very close to an enemy. And I think this while standing very close to an enemy is not just for Rabies. I've seen this happening with things like Pulverize and a bunch of other things such as Storm Strike and so on. A bunch of other druids. So they need to look into other druid skills because that same bug I've definitely seen happen with not just Rabies. In fact, I've never used Rabies since launch, but I've seen this bug happen definitely to both the Shockwave and the regular Pulverize itself. There's an issue with Stormclaw's aspect which allowed Shred to do extreme amounts of damage. For the Necro we have the following few fixes. An issue where Necromancers could not obtain daggers from the Purveyor of Curiosities. An issue where the Necromancer's minions would have their life bonuses deactivated while in town. An issue where Bone Spear cast through Chilling Wind from an elite enemy would increase the number of generated echoes for that cast. An issue where Enhanced Bone Spear could cause erratic movement. An issue where cancelling Blood Mist when it's already off cooldown would immediately recast it. Next for the Rogues. An issue where Shadow Step wouldn't trigger the aspect of Uncanny Treachery if the target was killed. An issue where Advanced Penetrating Shot would not knock down other players in PvP play. An issue where Twisting Blades would not come back when the ability killed a bloated Corpse Fiend enemy. An issue where the Dash skill would not move the full distance if targeting an enemy while using a controller. An issue where the Eldritch Bounty Paragon Note granted bonus resistances incorrectly. An issue where Rapid Fire had an extra arrow visual effect that behaved erratically. An issue where the Awakened Glyphstone wouldn't spawn for rogue players using improved Barrage. For the Sorc, some bug fixes. An issue where the Firebolt enhancement effect did not contribute to the Combustion Key passive. An issue where the passive stacks generated by Align the Elements could partially reset in an unexpected way. As well as an issue where casting Deep Freeze would prevent the Ice Shard enchantment effect from triggering. An issue where Aspect of Control was applying its damage bonus 3 times for staggered bosses. As well as an issue where the Gravitational Aspect was appearing weaker on two-handed weapons or amulets. And there's also an issue where the enchantment effect for Chain Lightning had no visual tracking bonus and could also unexpectedly drop off. An issue where Incinerate would immediately cost 30 mana when cast in addition to the consistent channeling mana cost. Incinerate now properly only costs mana as it is being channeled. And a bunch of general bug fixes. Multiple instances where players could unnaturally teleport during boss encounters. Issue where a chest in the western ways could be interacted with infinitely. Also an issue where the Airyman NPC couldn't be interacted with in certain situations. As well as an issue where otherwise breakable objects in the world would not be broken when evading through them. Then there's issues fixed regarding multiple instances where the player could avoid damage from bosses if they position themselves in a specific location. There's also an issue where Forged Relics could not be interacted with. Issues where monsters with a cold, bleeding, burning, or corruption affix would freeze players in one hit in Nightmare Dungeons with the cold enchanted affix. I've been struggling with this one, especially on builds without unstoppable skills. There's also issues that have been fixed where cold enchanted monsters froze players more often than intended in higher world tiers. Well, what would that mean? I've been getting one hit frozen, but is it 2 hit what we were supposed to see? Because I think even in the low tier Nightmare Dungeons, it has always been 2 hits you're frozen, and it should definitely be 4 or 5 hits, not 2 hits and you're frozen. Then fixed an issue where a chest could spawn that would provide infinite loot. Now bug fixes for Helltides and the Fields of Hatred, something that maybe many of you might be interested in figuring out about. An issue where the player could be damaged by the Helltide Firestorm while standing in Girandai. An issue where enemies resurrected by shamans would continuously drop aberrant cinders in Helltide. An issue where Chain Lightning could bounce infinitely between the caster and other player characters standing in Fields of Hatred Town. Fixed an issue where Crackling Energy could hit other players in Fields of Hatred Town. Fixed an issue where players could not see other players that they should when re-entering the Azuda Fields of Hatred zone. An issue where certain areas in the Fields of Hatred would be incorrectly flagged as a town, rendering players unable to cast skills while still being able to be damaged. Now, bug fixes regarding items and aspects. Fixed an issue where the cost reduction bonus from the Ring of Starless Skies could unexpectedly drop off. An issue where the aspect of the Protector would trigger its barrier effect after destroying a breakable object. An issue where the Ring of Misfortune had incorrect stats. An issue where the Ember Staff weapon didn't apply the bonus damage to crowd-controlled enemies, which is inherent for all staff-type weapons. An issue where any character menu interaction would reset the bonus granted by the Inner Calm aspect. An issue where the maximum life affix on the Mark of the Conclave quest item was scaling improperly. An issue where aspect power would also increase when upgrading an item at the blacksmith. The level requirement for sacred items will now cap at level 60, meaning you won't get sacred items with a bigger level requirement than 60. Then level requirement for ancestral items in the same way will not get bigger than 80. You would still need minimum 60, but the maximum will be 80 for ancestral items. An issue where the Mother's Embrace unique ring did not trigger properly with several abilities. I wonder what several would be. Now going on to monster-related bug fixes. An issue where items of higher power than intended were dropping from rare monsters. An issue where the Works jumping attack dealt no damage when passing through the player. It's an issue where the Pitiless Gur monster would endlessly run around in circles. And that's not just this one, there's many other enemies that do that, especially spiders. An issue where the Lightning Enhanced Champion Goldman would fail to deal damage to the player. An issue where monsters with the Suppressor affix would be immune to damage from abilities that started initially outside the immunity circle. For example, when a Barbarian started a Whirlwind cast before getting within proper range of the Suppressor monster. Fixed an issue where clones of a monster with the Suppressor affix would also have the Suppressor affix. This has been bothering me a lot when I encounter it. An issue where treasure goblins would behave erratically if initially engaged from a long distance. An issue where multiple other issues where monster behavior could not perform properly and could be exploited in some cases. Bug fixes related to quests and events. There is a lot of them. I'm not gonna read all of them, but if you care about quests and events, you might want to read the list. I'll leave it on the screen as I'm talking. Feel free to pause it, feel free to read through it, but in general, this mostly affects, again, main quests, side quests, and various different events that could happen in a dungeon, in a nightmare dungeon, or during the quest itself. Now there's a lot of stuff regarding user interface and user experience. I will read some of them, but not all of them. Because, again, it's a long list, it's gonna take forever if I want to get through all of it. But let's just say stuff like that. The Cult Leader Paragon passive no longer appears above hostile minions in PvP, for example. An issue where the you have a cross-network play enabled message was being sent to the chat each time a campaign quest objective was completed. An issue where articles in the newsfeed could not be opened using mouse and keyboard. An issue where the Mad Bomber title would not display for enemies encountered through the whisper of the same name. An issue where the bonus from the ballistic aspect displayed +0 to skills instead of +2 on the bonus bar. An issue where sigil sorting was inconsistent between inventory and the stash. An issue where the social tab on the action wheel editing window would be skipped when navigating on control. An issue where the amount of gold would not properly display when trading large quantities. An issue where item comparison numbers would be inaccurate if the item in question had a gem socketed that granted a stat that was also present on the base of the item. An issue with mapping functionality, issue where quest and whisper markers weren't displaying properly, various improvements to the consistency and quality of messaging, skill descriptions and tooltips, and various other UI and UX improvements, as well as a bunch that I didn't read to save time. There's also a bunch of miscellaneous bug fixes, which, again, issues such as the completion music for defeating Avarice could start playing before the boss was defeated. Always confirm your queues before celebrating, just in case, even though it's already fixed. They're saying fixed an issue where players couldn't send Battle.net friend requests to friends playing on console, issue where players could confirm if hardcore mode was enabled after logging in with a new character. An issue where players that haven't unlocked a higher world tier could be invited into a higher world tier party. Issue where players couldn't transfer leadership of a clan. Issue where the sender of a party invite would not be informed that the invite fell due to incompatibility with campaign provoke quests. Fixed an issue where a Fane's spear would duplicate in the cutscene where the player picks it up. Issue where Meshif's camo made no noises. Issue where there was no sound when Rat kicks Meshif awake, and various other improvements. And now comes a very important section, major section, which is the gameplay updates. I will start with the general ones. Now, Altars of Lilith and Walks are account-wide. Map Discovery is also account-wide. Whispers will no longer reward Sigil Dust. I don't see why this is the case. This is pretty much very bad choice of a nerf. Overall, wood quality has been significantly improved for Scion chests. The channel time for the Leaf Dungeon ability has been increased from 3 to 5 seconds. I don't see a reason why nerf something annoying like the Leaf Dungeon ability that already takes forever, from 3 to 5 seconds. Then generally reduced the tendency for many monsters to move around in combat so that melee characters don't have to chase down their enemies as much. Added PS5 DualSense Edge wireless controller support for PC. Now there are some very important changes to note about world tiers. World Tier 2 has had the following bonuses added. Bonus gold increased from 15 to 20% and monsters now drop 15% more items. Quantity, not quality. So yeah, overall they just wanted to make World Tier 2 more rewarding, and they like the difficulty it had. They're not changing the difficulty there. Now, level scaling inside dungeons and most overworld territories has been adjusted in World Tier 3 and 4. Monsters will begin to trail behind the player in levels after a certain point, up to a maximum of 5 levels behind. And this change does not affect world bosses, Legion events, Field of Hatred, Helltide, and Nightmare dungeons. So here it is how it is. If the player is level in World Tier 3, if the player is level under 55, the monster's level is 55. If the player's level is 56 to 60, the monster's level will be 55. And then if the player is level 61, the monster's level will be 56. For 62, 57, and so on. It will keep being minus 5 levels until World Tier 3's maximum monster level of 70. For World Tier 4, example, if the player level is below 75, the monster's level is 75. If the player level is 76 through 80, the monster level is 75. Starting with player level 81, the monster level will be 76. 82, 77, 83, 78, and so on, with a minus 5 level difference where the monster is 5 levels below you. Regarding the experience in terms of changes, there are some interesting things. What are the changes that they made to experience and experience rates? Pretty much it's worse than it used to be. I'll try to read it and explain it, but look at the text on the screen. It would be much easier to understand it than to listen to me try to explain it. So they're adjusting the bonus experience rewards for killing monsters that are higher level than the player. Before the changes, before this patch, if the enemy was 1 level higher than you, it was 15% experience bonus. If it was 2 levels higher than you, it was 20% experience. If it was 3 or more levels higher than you, you would get 25% bonus experience. Now what you get is 1.5% bonus experience up to 15% rather than up to 25%, and up to 10 levels difference rather than up to 3 or higher. So 1 level difference, instead of 15 you get 1.5, which is 10 times less. For 2 levels difference you get 3% rather than 20. For 3 levels difference it will be 4.5, then 6, 7.5, and so on, up to when you have 10 levels difference where the monster is 10 level higher than you, it's 15% experience bonus. Which again, extremely bad decision. Many people won't be happy about it. There was no need for this to be done. I don't agree with their bullshit developers note explanation. I think it's total trash of an explanation and of a reason to do something that definitely was not needed and uncalled for. Another thing they're adjusting is the experience rewards for monster level offsets. I have no idea what exactly they mean with those level offsets for higher world tiers. They're saying that current world tier level offsets before the patch were World Tier 2 up to +3, World Tier 3 up to +10, World Tier 4 up to +100. I have again no idea what they mean with those level offsets. Experience rewards for monster level offsets. They're changing those for World Tier 2 up to +3, unchanged. World Tier 3 from +10 up to goes to up to +6. And then World Tier 4 up to +100 changes to up to +10. Which is 10 times less of what we would be getting. So there's massive nerf to that in terms of experience. And they're saying, for example, you're level 1, your friends bring you to World Tier 4 and leave you at the entrance of a dungeon. They start killing level 100 monsters. Prior to the season of the Malignant, you would get level 100 monster experience times 1 plus 25%. And now you would get level 11 monster experience times 1 plus 15%. So does it mean that the monster experience is different based on the level of the monster? And then on top of that, you also have the bonuses based on the world tier you're playing and on how many levels the difference is. So that means you could get a level 100 experience monster at level 1, but now you could at level 1 only get level 11 monster experience, which again, a massive nerf to the experience. There's some changes to the Helltide. Again, not the ones that we mentioned earlier, but those are more of again gameplay updates to the Helltide. And this is that monsters are now 3 levels higher than the player instead of 2. And the Tortured Gift of Mysteries chest has had its cost increase from 250 aberrant cinders, and it used to be 175, which is a massive nerf to obtaining items and stuff from Helltides. Terrible change. Then interactable objects in Helltide zones now have a small chance of dropping aberrant cinders, which is okay, a good thing to have. And now we're getting to the massive balance changes list. There is a developer note again regarding stuff, but in 2 words, they have noticed that stuff like core skill damage, vulnerable damage, crit damage were overperforming, so they're nerfing those. They have noticed that damage reduction was overperforming and making so that other defensive stats people weren't taking, and they in general don't want people to take defensive stats as much, they want them to take offensive stats a little bit more often. Other things that are getting changed are things like physical damage, blood damage, skill damage, storm skill damage, fire damage, lightning damage, frost skill damage, and all of that. All of those types of damages that are not core, that are not crit damage or vulnerable, but either are skill to a certain category or to a certain element type, so that people would start using those more. And I'll go and start reading those class by class. Hopefully during that time of me telling you this, you already read what the developer note was. If you need some time, pause it, continue reading, because we are moving on right now. Starting with the Barbarian, the balancing changes to the skills. Violent double swing vulnerable duration increased from 1 to 2 seconds. Furious Upheaval damage bonus per stack increased from 3 to 5%. Power charge cooldown reduction is now capped to 3 targets for a maximum of 9 seconds of cooldown reduction. Tactical Ground Stomp Fury gain increased from 25 to 40. Enhanced Death Blows damage bonus to bosses increased from 100% to 150%. Enhanced Steel Grasp vulnerable duration increased from 2.5 to 3 seconds. Enhanced Rupture damage increased from 30 to 45%. Warrior's Rupture attack speed bonus increased from 20 to 30% and duration increased from 4 to 5 seconds. Fighter's Rupture healing increased from 15 to 18% maximum life. Regarding passives, Hamstring now only slows healthy enemies, and slow amount increased from 10, 20, 30 to 20, 40, 60%. Cut to the Bone bleeding damage bonus to vulnerable reduced from 6, 12, 18 to 5, 10, 15. Regarding Paragons, the Rat Glyph, this you would notice to every single class has been done. The glyph that gives you core skill crit damage now applies to all skills, not just core skills. Now aspects. Relentless Berserker's aspect berserking duration increased from 1 to 2 seconds. Battle Mat aspect berserking duration increased from 1 to 2.5 to 2 to 3.5 seconds. Brawler's aspect damage increased from 1 through 1.3 seconds to 1.5 to 1.8 seconds. Aspect of Burning Rage damage increased from 0.8 to from 0.08 until 0.14 to the new one 0.22, 0.28. Aspect of Iron Warrior damage reduction increased from 15 to 25 to the new one 18 to 28. Flaking aspect Wookie hit chance increased from the old 30% to 50% to the new 40% to 60%. Aspect of Ancestral Echoes Wookie hit chance increased from between 40 and 50% to the new 50 and 60%. Weapon Master's aspect Wookie hit chance increased from the old 32 through 50% to the new 37 to 55%. Ghost Devastating Grips now explode every 2 seconds or after it ends. and its hit cap has been removed. Fields of Crimson bleeding damage bonus increased from 10% to 15%. Now, balance changes for the Druid. Let's start with the skills. Enhanced Quo attack speed bonus is increased from 10 to 15%. Storm Strike damage reduction is reduced from 25 to 15%. Boulder damage is increased from 33 to 46%. Savage Trample Spirit gain is increased from 20 to 40%. Prime Lacerate healing increased from 3 to 5%. Cataclysm lightning damage increased from 64 to 77%, and tornado damage from 19 to 23%. Supreme Cataclysm vulnerable duration increased from 2 to 3 seconds. Prime Cataclysm duration increased from 2 to 4 seconds. Prime Grisly Rage now grants Unstoppable for 6 seconds instead of while active. Regarding passives, Provocation threshold required for guaranteed overpower is reduced from 35, 30-25 to 24, 20-16. This is nice. It should have been even more of a reduction. It should have been 20, 15, 10 or something like 20, 18, 15, something like that. But 24, 2016 is not a bad one. Hopefully it's more useful. Now, regarding Spirit Boon, Masochistic now also requires a Wookiee hit chance of 75%. Prickle Skin Thorns increased from 0.1 to 0.15. Iron Feather maximum life increased from 10 to 14%. Bolster Fortify increased from 10% to 15% of maximum life. Overall damage increased from 0.2 to 0.25. Paragons, the Spirit Glyph again, affecting all types of damage instead of just score skill crit damage bonuses. Regarding aspects and items, let's start with aspects. Aspect of the Calm Breeze Wookiee hit chance increased from 5 through 10% to the new 7 through 12%. Now, balanced aspect maximum speed increased from the between 30-50 to the between 60 and 80. Aspect of the Tempest damage bonus increased from between 7 and 15% to the between 10 and 18%. Skinwalker's aspect healing increased from between 0.05 to 0.1 to the new 1.07 through 0.12. Symbiotic aspect cooldown reduction is reduced from 4 to 8 seconds to the new one 3 to 5 seconds. Aspect of the Stampede damage bonus increase from 10, 20 to the 16, 26%. Shepherd's damage bonus is increased from 6, 8% to the 6 to 10%. Regarding the items, the Insatiable Fury Werebear skill ranks are increased from 2 to 3, and the Mad Wolf's Glee Werewolf skill ranks increased from 2 to 3. So the permanent Werewolf and Werebear form armors now give you 1 extra rank to those skills. The Necro has a few more things to read about. Regarding skills, Initiates Decompose Swow increased from 30 to 50%. Paranormal Sever cast required for vulnerable reduced from 4 to 3. Enhanced Blood Surge healing increased from 2.5% to 3% of maximum life. Enhanced Blunt Lance damage reduction from piercing reduced from 15% to 10%. Bone Prison initial essence gained increased from 15 to 25%. Abhorrent Iron Maiden healing increased from 5 to 7% of maximum life. Golems move faster and unhindered through enemies when their cooldown is activated. Supreme Blood Wave leaves behind blood drops easier in its path. Ray Skeleton, Corpse Explosion, and Corpse Tendrils range for auto-targeting corpses on mouse and keyboard increased by 50%. Ray Skeleton, Skeletal Priest bonus damage increased from 20 to 30%. Race Skeleton, Skeletal Priest healing increased from 10 to 15%. Measly increase here. Passives, Evolution bonus damage to vulnerable reduced from 6, 12, 18 to 5, 10, 15. Transfusion minion healing increased from 15, 30, 45 to 20, 40, 60%. Drain Vitality, Wookiee hit chance increased from 25 to 30%. Amplified damage increased from 369 to 4812. Book of the Death changes. Necromancer's minions will now automatically resummon after respawning during a world boss fight. Skeleton Warrior Defender's upgrade Thorns inherited increased from 40 to 50%. Shadow Skeleton Mage upgrade attacks required for an additional Shadow Bolt reduced from 5 to 4. Bone Skeleton Mage upgrade Fortify amount increased from 11 to 20%. Iron Golem's upgrade attacks required for Slam attack reduced from 5 to 4. Regarding the Paragons, again, like all the other classes, the Essence Glyph now, instead of giving you core skill crit damage, gives you all skills crit damage. Regarding aspects for the Necro, Splintering Aspect Bone Shard damage bonus reduced from 50 100% to the 30-60%. Aspect of Plunging Darkness bonus damage increased from 50 to 100% to 75-125%. Coldbringer's Aspect of Blizzard cooldown reduced from 10 to 8 seconds. Aspect of Hungry Blood, chance to fire a blood lance is increased from the old 10 to 20% to the new 13 to 23%. Blood-soaked aspect damage increased from 0.15 to 0.2 to the new 0.24 to 0.31. Aspect of Ultimate Shadow damage increased from 0.16 to 0.22 to the new one 0.43 to 0.48. Aspect of Grasping Veins critical strike damage bonus reduced from 30 to 60% to the new one 20 to 40%. OCS Gale aspect bonus Bone Storm duration increased from 4 to 8 seconds to the 5 to 10 seconds. Aspect of the Damned damage bonus increased from 30-40% to the 40-50%. Both baited aspect echo damage reduction reduced from 70-60% to the 60-50% new value. Aspect of Reanimation Skeletons damage bonus increased from 20-30% to the 30-40% new value. And regarding items, Bloodless Scream Essence gained increased from 2 to 5 to the 7-10 new value. Deathless Visage damage increased from 0.25, 0.35 to the 0.28, 0.38 new value. And now the Rogue bounce changes. Regarding skills, Advanced Rapid Fire duration increased from 3 to 5 seconds. Caltrops cast speed increased by 15%. Enhanced Code Imbue Wacky Hit chance increased from 30 to 40%. Enhanced Smoke Grenade damage bonus increased from 15 to 20%. Methodical Dash maximum cooldown reduction increased from 3 to 4 seconds. Concealment Stealth duration increased from 4 to 5 seconds. Enhanced Dark Shroud's chance to not be consumed increased from 10 to 14%. Supreme Death Trap cooldown reduction increased from 10 to 12 seconds. Regarding passives, the Victimized Wacky Hit chance increased from 30 to 35%. Siphoning Strikes now also requires a Wacky Hit chance of 75%. Rugged damage reduction against damage over time effects increased from 5, 10, 15 to the new 6, 12, 18. Mending Obscurity healing per second while stealthed increased from 369 to the 4, 8, 12% new value. Aftermath energy restored increased from 25, 50, 75 to 30, 60, 90. In terms of Paragons, just like the other classes, the Combat Glyph bonus now will be affecting not just core skills but all types of skills and their crit damage. And the Eldritch Bounty legendary node duration is increased from 6 to 9 seconds. Regarding specializations, the Preparation's ultimate cooldown reduction was increased from 4 to 5 seconds. Now, legendary aspect changes for the Rogue. Aspects of Volatile Shadows damage increased from 0.1075 through 193 to 0.2 to 0.27. Icy Alchemist aspect Chill increased from 15 to 25%. Shadow Spicer aspect damage increased from 25-35 to 80-100, which is a massive increase there. Then Toxic Alchemist damage increased from 0.080 through 0.13 to the new one 0.11 to 0.16. Then Vengeful Aspect Wacky Hit chance increased from 30-50% to 40-60%. Aspect of Imitated Imbuement's duration increased from 5 to 9 seconds. Aspect of Stolen Vigor healing increased from 0.1206 to 0.408. Aspect of Little Dusk Life on Kill duration increased from 4 to 6 seconds. Aspect of Noxious Ice bonus damage increased from 10-25% to 14-29%. Aspect of Elusive Menace dodge chance increased from 1.5% to 3.7%. Then for items, the Skyhunter's energy gain increased from 15.25 to 20.30. Grasp of Shadow, a Wacky Hit chance increased from 20.30 to 24.34%. Now regarding the Sork and balance changes there, we have Enhanced Charge Bolts with the skills. Let's start with the skills. Enhanced Charge Bolts damage increased from 24 to 30% and now benefits from skill ranks. Destructive Charged Bolts damage reduction increased from 20 to 25%. Destructive Incinerate damage reduction increased from 20 to 25%. Ice Blade's cast Clean Up has been tightened, allowing players to act after its cast sooner. Firebolt initial damage increased from 10% to 18%. Wizard's Firewall maximum increased mana generation increased from 25 to 35%. Wizard's Blizzard core skill mana cost reduction increased from 10 to 20%. Supreme Deep Freeze cooldown reduction increased from 50 to 100%. Regarding passives, Elemental Dominance now also affects mastery skills instead of just core skills. I like that change again. It definitely would help more the mastery builds. Potent Warding duration increased from 3 to 9 seconds. Protection Barrier duration increased from 2 to 3 seconds. Align the Elements damage reduction per second increased from 1 to 3 to 369. Mana Shield damage reduction increased from 5, 10, 15% to 7, 14, 21%. Devouring Blaze bonus critical strike damage reduced from 10, 20, 30 to 7, 14, 21. Devouring Blaze bonus critical strike damage to immobilized reduced from 25, 50, 75 to 10, 20, 30%. Fiery Search mana regeneration increased from 10, 20, 30% to 15, 30, 45%. Regarding Paragons, just like all the other classes, the Destruction Glyph now affects all damage instead of just core skills. Very good for mastery builds yet again. Enhancements. Spark Enhancement chance to form crafting energy increased from 10% to 14%. Frozen Orb Enhancement chance to be cast increased from 20 to 30%. Incinerate Enhancement cooldown reduced from 18 to 14 seconds. Hydra Enhancement mana threshold reduced from 300 to 200. Regarding legendary aspects, a lot of changes here for the Sorc. Aspect of Efficiency mana cost reduction increased from 10, 20 to 15, 25% and now affects mastery skills. Aspect of Armageddon, damage increased from 0.205, 0.25 to 0.35.4. Aspect of Shattered Stars damage increased from 0.15.2 to 0.2, 0.25. Serpentine Aspect Hydra duration reduction reduced from 30, 20% to 20, 10%. Glacial Aspect Ice Spikes bonus damage to Frozen reduced from 25 to 15%. Glacial Aspect Ice Spikes damage increased from 0.2, 0.3 to 0.25, 0.35. Aspect of the Frozen Tundra Ice Spikes damage increased from 0.25, 0.35 to 0.3.4. Aspect of the Frozen Wake Ice Spikes damage increased from 0.3 to 0.25, 0.35 and Chill increased from 10 to 15%. Aspect of Biting Coat chance to apply vulnerable to frozen enemies increased from 25-35% to 30-40%. Encased Aspect Life and Mana Restore per second increased from 10-20% to 20-30%. Stable Aspect chance for a free cast increased from 5-10 to 7-12%. Aspect of Splintering Energy chance to spawn an additional Lightning Spear increased from 11-20% to 41-50%. Aspect of the Unbroken Tether chance for additional Chain Lightning chains increased from 25-35 to 30-40%. Regarding items, Gloss of the Illuminator Fireball damage reduction reduced from 65-75% to 55-65%. Estus Air Wound Crit Strike damage from movement speed increased from 15-25 to 20-30%. Esador's Overflowing Camel chance to release a Lightning Nova increased from 10 to 15%. Now, regarding general balance changes for aspects, items, etc., let's start with the aspects. Aspect of Disobedience maximum stacks reduced from 100 to 60, which reduces the bonus armor percent from 25-50 to 15-30%. Aspect of Retribution bonus damage to stunt reduced from 20-40 to 10-20%. Exploiter's aspect bonus damage to Unstoppable reduced from 20-50 to 20-40%. Starlight aspect Restore increased from 10-20 to 20-40. Regarding items, the Butcher's Cleaver's Woe increased from 40-75 to 61-75%. There's also drop rate adjustment. Increased bonus to drop ancestral and sacred items in Nightmare Dungeons from 5 to 10%. Removed a 20% chance to drop an extra equipment item from elite monsters outside of Nightmare Dungeons and Helltides. Increased the chance to drop an extra equipment item from elite monsters in Nightmare Dungeons and Helltides by plus 10%. They're not giving us the exact chance number here. What is the old, what is the new? Nightmare Dungeons now have a 50% chance to drop a second legendary item upon completion. Nightmare Dungeons now give 3 rare items upon completion, up from 1. Regarding monsters, very nasty thing here. Increased monster HP scaling from 85% to 100% bonus per extra player in a party, which is pretty much making it less useful and less advisable to group up. They're pushing players towards solo play and towards party builds. Party builds for party or just playing solo. Instead of like it was before, where it was better to play in a team. Now, Miscellaneous adjusted the scaling of the Greed Shrine to improve its effectiveness throughout the game. World bosses now drop potions more often. There is no longer a limit to how many materials you can refine into higher materials at once, thankfully. And now we're moving on to something that definitely a lot of you would be happy, unhappy, and there is going to be a lot of opinions about this. Item affixes changes, there's a lot of them. And overall, there is developer note that some affixes are too good and outshining others, and others are too weak and underperforming, and people never pick them for obvious reasons. So they're trying to start with a lot of nerfing and some buffing here and there. It's a massive list. And I'm not gonna call everything. I'm gonna show you the list on the screen. You can pause and see it, but in general, let's start with certain things. Control impaired duration reduction can now appear on pants. Bear regeneration can now appear for all classes. It will also begin dropping later in the game. Those are pretty much nerfs because that means even more rolls you don't need would start appearing on your items. Lucky hit chance while you have a barrier. Again, more things would appear for you and definitely not nice, but it will appear for all classes. Reduced by 12% when on helm and by 20% when on amulet on offhand. Even less of a reason to have this. Mastery skill damage, newly added, can appear on sorcerer weapons and it scales identically to core skill damage, which is definitely something much needed. Resistance to all elements can now appear on shields. Another nerf because right now, until they fix resistances, they should have waited before adding this until season 2. They should have waited for season 2 when they rework resistances before they add this to be a possible roll on shields. Because right now, it's just one extra roll that is fooding the pool of tons of rolls already. Now, regarding core stats, which is the main stat of a class, were overperforming and they're reducing those. So strength was 50% stronger when on weapons, and it will be 25% stronger when on weapons. And the same goes for dex, intelligence, or willpower. If that is your main attribute, definitely interesting nerf here. Now, when it comes to cooldown reduction, again, they were saying that it was very strong, and yes, obviously it was very strong. And cooldown reduction overall is reduced by approximately 30%. Imbuement skill cooldown reduction and trap skill cooldown reduction the same way. Now, as I mentioned, the Holy Trinity, crit damage, core skill damage, vulnerable damage, massive nerfs there. For crit strike damage by approximately 17%, for lightning or with bone, earth, imbued, and werewolf skills by approximately 17%, and then vulnerable damage reduced by approximately 40%. Then cooldown reduction inherent on offhands, approximately 35%. Crit strike damage inherent on swords, approximately 50%. Vulnerable damage inherent on crossbows, approximately 65%. And now it would be better to just go bow and use the mastery, weapon mastery, or whatever it was called, passive, that gives you vulnerable when using bows. That would be the better way to use it now, instead of crossbows. Then, damage to crowd controlled enemies decreased approximately 30, damage to frozen enemies increased approximately 20%, and I guess coating builds would be definitely very useful with those changes, especially if playing a flurry. Now, increases to physical, fire, cold, lightning, poison, shadow, non-physical, by 25%. Then physical damage over time, fire damage over time, shadow damage over time. Where is cold damage over time for Blizzard? Please increase cold damage over time for Blizzard by those 40%. Don't make Blizzard builds remain trash. Sure, you're giving us mastery skill damage and a bunch of other bonuses to mastery skills, but we want and need cold damage over time. And this 40% bonus increase is definitely nice for the fire, physical, and shadow, but why just not make it damage over time instead of specifying what type, so that even Blizzard can be affected from it. Then damage with two-handed bludgeoning, two-handed slashing, dual wielding, ranged skills that swap to a new weapon in human form while shape-shifted, 25% higher than what they were. But bone, brawling, companion, conjuration, cutthroat, darkness, earth, frost, imbued, imbuement, marksman, pyromancy, shock, storm, summoning, trap skill, weapon mastery. No, actually, let's go up until the summoning. Those are 25. Then trap, weapon mastery, 33% increase. Werebear, werewolf, 25. Total armor reduced by 30%, mind you. Then attack speed for 4 seconds after dodging an attack. Damage for 4 seconds after dodging an attack, 20% increase. Total armor while in werebear, werewolf, 25% increase. And damage reduction from close and distant, 20% reduced. Damage reduction from enemies that are bleeding, burning, poisoned, 25% decrease. The same goes for affected by shadow over time. And damage reduction while fortified, reduced by 25% roughly. So as I said, they want us to be squishier, and they want us to use certain things that people weren't using until now because they weren't useful considering how much stronger some of the other ones. So we'll be doing less damage overall, and we'll be squishier, so reaching higher tiers of Nightmare Dungeons won't be as easy, because many things would one-shot people. So the things that weren't getting one-shot the way Sorcerers were, well, now they would most likely be getting one-shot as well. That's pretty much the summary of this patch.
To get notified when I upload more content like this one or other builds and guides for Wooter and not so Wooter games, you can subscribe to my channel and hit that bell button to not miss out on notifications. As well as keep in mind there's something called memberships on YouTube, which lets you be a paying member for my channel to get access to perks such as emotes and badges made by me, as well as the option to get one-on-one tutoring for the very basics of Adobe Photoshop, Premiere and After Effects. And memberships can be cancelled at any time if you no longer wanna be a member. Thanks for watching all the way until the end, Struck Web. Keep it cool until next time, and goodbye.